golf coach for a decade.
Hey, the time is now 2 o'clock. We'll call this Facilities Planning Committee to order. Just an update on where we are as a committee. Back in November, we listed 8 priorities: early learning, alternative school, boundaries, new middle school, athletic facilities, possible new high school, elementary school assessment, and renovations. So we've already tackled 2 of those, which are early learning and alternative school. Now DLR is here to talk about boundaries, which could lead into a middle school discussion and an elementary school assessment discussion. So with that being said, I think he needs a minute to hook up, and then he has a presentation for us.
And I'll take the blame for this because I didn't tell him the meeting was at TMC, so it's not his fault.
We'll pass around a sign-in sheet.
Thanks for calling the sword.
Yeah. Okay, good.
I've never been there. Summer vacation. Are you going up there? We're staying. We talked about, we actually did Traverse City. Where are you going?
Why tonight? It's hot out there.
I've heard great things.
Played yesterday, did a fundraising charity.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And, oh man, I think it was the 90s, humid.
Rasher called me and said, "Hey man, you want to play 9 holes 4 minutes league?" I said, "Absolutely not."
Even if I could, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I said, "I really don't even want to play minutes league."
Here's what I learned about my college age, post-college age kids. If you pay, they'll go on vacation.
Oh, absolutely. Neutrality.
So, I've learned. My son's 24, my daughter's 26. If I pay for everything, they're there. They're there.
One of the 5 okay.
Yeah.
And my gut tells me maybe we should go now.
Yeah. No. I mean, honestly, it's just. I mean, you'll have a blast. It's fun. Yeah, you'll have fun. I mean, it might not be quite as magical, but it'll be a great city for sure.
Busy finally can make it right.
Excellent.
Without a conflict. So damn business gets in there.
So yeah, well, I can relate to that.
Considering he's 85,
It is
last year, he just had a knee.
Really? How
Yeah.
long? How long?
So he's still witty, still hilarious. You know, he can't really play because of that. That's very good. But I mean, he
My
has.
son was in late April. I emceed the church auction. He was there.
Yeah.
He was with it that night.
Yeah. Maybe he's really taking care of.
If I see him in the house,
Yeah, he'll have dinner
yeah,
with
he'll
him.
go out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but he's got a pretty good attitude. He's like, look, I've had a great ride with Tom. It's probably over.
I have no idea why they want kids. You'll make any sense.
Yep.
But he's got like a lunch group that does 3 times a week, and a breakfast group that does once a week. And like I said, I think you're right. Thank you.
You bet.
So,
Good.
really.
Good.
He's still witty, he's still with it, he's still likes to have fun. So,
$280
you know, he,
Yep.
can't do it anymore.
235.
I had to bring my
Shoot, if I could have, they shot his age, a couple times, 32, 33. I mean, if I could have his golf career, I'd take it right now.
No question.
Like, I can't live it.
I said, "You're working out." He says, "Yeah, I'm saying I had to walk 2 miles."
Right, Ron, different.
I don't know what happens. You can just
No CGS, that should be
Right, 83.
one of the 3.
I'm sorry. Ready?
Okay,
Ready to go.
apologize for the delay. Like I said, it was my mix-up. I forgot to tell Kevin to be at TMC. And so, as David mentioned, the next goal of the Board of Education was boundaries. And administratively, we feel like in order to do the boundaries right, then we have to fix the middle school model first. And so that's what we're going to kind of talk about today is the middle school model. And then at the July meeting, I think we'll start talking about elementary schools. Because the closure of elementary schools, feeder patterns, those types of things, they can't be talked about if you don't have a middle school model in place that you're going to use moving forward. So today Kevin's here from DLR. DLR worked with us in 2019. And one thing that along the way, one thing I've told him that we have to put a plan together and stick to the plan. And so as a facilities committee, that's what I need from you is to help us develop that plan. And we'll stick through it, and you know, we'll run no tax increase bond issue, we'll run bond issue, we'll do whatever it takes to get to that point, but we need to get started. And so that's what he's here today to kind of talk about where we're at. We did get a preview of this administratively on the 14th last week, and told him what to hone in on, and hopefully we can make some progress. So Kevin.
All right, thank you, Gabe. I'm going to just kind of run through a little bit of our methodology, and then we've got 3 scenarios that we're going to identify that from last week's meeting and what we've done to date. So what we've done is we've taken all of the information from the school district, looked at the demographic data, which we can also geocode and geolocate where students are, and what grade level they are. We don't worry about ages, or we don't worry about individuals. We just worry about those characteristics of how old they are, where they live, and where they go to school. So those are the things that we look at. We also do, as part of that information, we do know about IEPs and 504s and things like that, which sometimes identify where students go. They may be going to a different school than in the boundaries that they're in, just because they have those particular programs that they're involved in. So this is just showing you where all the schools are in the district's boundaries. This is, and it's really impossible for you to see as it is right now, but what we wanted to do is show where the concentration again of students are, just to give you a sense of the current situation, the 4 middle schools that we have at this time, and where students are located. You can see, I mean, we've just colored them, and we also have when you're looking at this from a closer standpoint, you can see that there's triangles and squares and octagons, and then there's the different colors to tell you where students are. So the reason we do the color and the shape is because sometimes a student doesn't resides in a boundary area that goes to another. So it's important for you to see. So for instance, I think I don't know if I can make that bigger, I can't, but you can see down here in that lower left-hand corner, there's a green square. So that student goes to Rubidoux for some reason. So anyway, that's just those anomalies that we look at when we're going through it. So we started to create a scenario. We know so this is all 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students. This is not all the students in the district. It's just 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And so we started to look at the analysis of, okay, if we have 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, what happens if we move 6th graders into these middle schools? Some of the schools already have the room for students, but like Truman and Bodie, with the 6th graders coming in, there would need to be at least a 30,000 square foot addition at each one of those schools to make that happen. And we're using the 6, 7, 8 model because I think that that it's been talked about now for quite a while, and I think that there was a conversation even a couple of years ago about not having a dual model of 7, 8. Some schools are 7, 8. Some schools are 6, 7, 8. So and Truman, if looking at this today, if you added 6th graders, you'd still have room at Truman. It's a small number, but you'd be right at the maximum number of students there. We do have, and all of these shows the 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders. It shows the overall students that would be in that building, and then also the capacity. For instance, Rubidoux would have 444 students there, and it has a capacity of 540. That's using the DESI standard of square footage. When we are talking about adding square footage to a building, we're typically saying that it takes about 130 to 150 square feet for a middle school student to that's usually a good measure for us to tell us whether or not the building's big enough for that to happen. So in that case, Rubidoux has got room. Bodie, 735 overall students if you go 6, 7, 8, but its capacity is only 510. That's the reason why we're talking about square footage being added there. And then Truman is the same thing, whereas Spring Garden is big enough to there's 436 students that would come to Spring Garden, and we've got room for 550.
And I think it's safe to say that we don't want a 30,000 square foot addition to Bodie or Truman. I mean, that's fiscally irresponsible. So that's kind of not an option. So as a facilities group, that's what we need to discuss is what are our options now?
Yeah. And we didn't look at, we did the master planning, so we have a facility condition index. I don't know if you guys remember when I came once before and we talked a little bit about facility condition index, or FCI. In the future, as we talk about FCI is the condition of the building. We haven't overlapped condition of building with where they're at with this kind of information. We've just strictly just looked at the number of students. So scenario number 2, it is we again 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. These are not true boundary lines. We just drew some concept ideas of where, just for the student counts. We're trying to look at it at about 800 students. If you go to 3 schools, so you have one middle school feeding into one high school. So in this case, what we've identified, and again, just trying to make that even across the board. Trying to get, picking up students and so they don't have to travel too far. So we've shown Lindbergh, Oak Grove Middle School, and Carden Park as, if those were options, what would that look like? So there are some enrollment differences here, and as we know, there's a dense population of students right in the center of the city, so we're taking those and moving those into those middle school boundaries. Whoops. I'm going to go through, and when we get done with this, we have just a little analysis of each one of these to give you a sense of what that looks like, and where there might be some addition of space. You know, the thing here, it doesn't change. For instance, Lindbergh would have 800 students, and its capacity is right now at 550. And then the number of students at Oak Grove would be 655, but their maximum capacity is 790. So they're getting closer to that, but we don't have that number of students going into that school. And then Carden Park, we'd have to look at boundaries and locations of those, but we have about 900 students going to that location, and that just really wouldn't work because they're at 670.
So I'm sorry, so you're saying if we converted Carden Park, did you say Lindbergh
And Oak Grove.
and Oak Grove to middle schools?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
This is and the thought is that some of these, when we were looking at the buildings, we were thinking about, for instance, Spring Garden, Carden Park, the newer schools that are larger in square footage have less need or less amount to add to them, and that's the and Oak Grove. So that's just throwing out the idea that we're trying to look at sizes, and is 3 better than 4? Is 4 better than 3? And some of this is operations, some of this is number of schools that you have available. We're going to talk about what happens when you have this different setup in these different scenarios, and how many elementaries you would need with that. This is another scenario. Another scenario is where we have Rubidoux, Bodie, and Spring Garden. And these are just a little bit closer together, but Bodie is probably, we do have to add space. You would have to add, like we were saying before, you'd have to add space at Rubidoux and Bodie. So this is kind of an overview of each one of these scenarios. Gives you the capacity of students that would be enrolled there. And let's just look at far left where you've got the scenario where we said where that's the current condition. If you were to move 6th graders there, your enrollment would be 735. DESE standard capacity is 510, so we're 225 short. That's where we said we'd need to add 30,000 square feet in those locations of Bodie and Truman. You can see that as we move over and we say, and this is probably, you're saying duh, but we were just trying to identify, is there any way to have 3 middle schools that feed into each one of the high schools, and what would that look like? And those are and you can see in the red, the deficiency in numbers of students for Lindbergh and Carden Park, again, if you have your sixth graders there. And the scenario, the next scenario. And this is a lot of numbers, so maybe it's easy to, this is that, this is just again, a snapshot idea. If you were to do this, the square footage that you might need to add to these buildings to make them work for a 6, 7, 8 model. So you can see in scenario 1, just like we said, scenario 2, you've got about 30,000 square feet at Lindbergh and Carden Park. And then again, in scenario 3, where each of those 3 buildings, there would be some additions needed there to add the number of students. And just that note down at the bottom there, we use 130 square feet per student to start to create that calculation, just as a planning concept.
Each one of those buildings has enough land space to add that?
Well, and that's the next thing. We haven't really thrown a lot of space on each one of those buildings or each one of those sites. I think that we have some restrictions in some of these locations. If we were to, 30,000 square feet will eat up a lot of land space. So,
I'm thinking Lindbergh.
yeah, Lindbergh is probably one that, and its FCI probably is high, or excuse me, it's low. It's not very. There's some restrictions there.
And it doesn't have to be Lindbergh. Rubidoux set up right now as a middle school. You can leave it there, but you're still going to have to add on to Rubidoux as well if you went that route. I thought it was crazy when I first saw this, and I was in the back of my mind, and I kind of, after I started thinking about it a little bit, I kind of like it, because if you're going to upset the apple cart, then let's just totally catch it on fire.
Is there a big difference between Bodie and Truman? I mean, Bodie's by far the oldest of those buildings.
Yeah.
I mean, by far.
The bad thing, the worst, I don't know. What do you think? What administratively? Truman doesn't have an athletic facility. They don't have a gym, so that hurts big time.
Right.
And that's going to be the next piece of the puzzle. All that stuff needs to come into this
Right.
equation. And we told them whenever we left, if
Right.
we're going to do this, let's do it right.
But I mean, you're already.
So they need middle school facilities. They need all of that stuff.
But if you keep Bodie, you're already adding 47,000 square feet.
Right.
I mean, to me, there's no reason to spend that money on high
I agree.
school.
That's
I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
I mean, I think any scenario where Bodie gets added onto
Yeah.
probably
Yeah,
needs
it's
mixed,
done. Yeah.
because that just makes no.
Is there capacity in our elementaries, if, just a hypothetical, if it was just the 7th and 8th model in middle school and put 6th grade back into elementaries? I know it would need to be redrawn in that. Is there space in the elementaries?
Not on the south end.
Okay. Well, yeah.
That's where we're going to be hurting is the Hosea Hyde.
So I'm looking at I always believe in ruling out every possible situation.
Yeah.
So we have 3 really good potential middle schools: Lafayette, Benton, and Central. And, I'm just brainstorming here with a scenario. Is it possible to build 3 high schools with just the schools, the extras come later, football field, baseball field, all that, convert the high schools into middle schools, which would allow you to take Rubidoux and turn it into an elementary school for probably Pershing, Gene Field, take Springfield, turn it into an elementary school, and go, because you would really be able to retire Bodie. You could possibly turn Truman into an elementary as well, and you could probably retire about five or six schools if that was the goal. But I think that if the 6, 7, 8 model, we talked about having wings in different areas. I think that could be set up in our current high schools I hate to spend money twice, and I hate to spend money on patching things, which put, at spending money on some of the schools, I just, like I said, don't put more money into Bodie, different things like that. Would we be better just to rip the Band-Aid off? And I know it has to do with bonding capacity and
Yeah.
such, but is there enough to build 3 basic schools? Because we can get by with using football field. I mean, Staley and all the Oak Park and all them, they've done those things to get the schools up, and we can add the smaller expenditures to it later.
So if you went to, I don't like scenario 3 just because Bodie needs to just not exist. No offense to Bodie people, it's the building. But scenario 2, if you did those 3, would then Spring Garden turn into an elementary school, which I think it was originally built to be? So Spring Garden would go back to an elementary school, which would help alleviate some of the Hosea enrollment. You know what I mean? You'd add a 3rd elementary school to the south side. Hosea is
Or you'd be
maxed out.
Or you'd be able to close Hyde in the capacity because Spring Garden would
I
be
just
able
don't
to
think-
take a lot of capacity.
Hosea is just busting
Yes.
at the seams.
And it was
At the
built for that?
seams.
Spring Garden was
Spring Garden
built,
was,
yeah, as an elementary.
I mean, they had
I guess
5
So that,
sections
I think
of
that's the
Hosea.
next conversation. We need to land on something that we need to do for the middle schools. Elementary's gonna take care of themselves.
What's capacity, or how many students are in Hyde right now? And how many elementary students would Spring Garden be able to handle?
I'm out of Power School.
Yeah.
Power School shut down for the
All
World
right. I can't find the usual stuff on the new website either, so I'm kind of lost
I
there.
have screenshots.
Sir, are you-
Hold on.
I guess I'm trying to figure out in my head, is this like a short-term
No, we
solution,
need- we
long-term?
need long-term.
Because it really feels like like as you talk about middle school taking care of the elementary, I think if we took care of the high school and take care of the middle school, because then you have,
That's what I was thinking,
I mean, whether it's 2 or 3 or whatever,
Domino effect.
but I think long-term, if you figured out high school, it would help you figure out kind of.
But this is
How
what we
everything
do
else falls
every
into
single
place.
time.
But
Every
it-
time we get ready to start somewhere, we start to make a decision, we say, oh no, let's start it
not
here,
changing.
let's start.
Well, I
Like, they
think-
did this work, let's just.
I think you can't start with the high, let me tell you why you can't start with high school, just in my professional opinion. You can't start at the high schools because that's gonna take 7 years to get done. And the issue with that is, I don't have 7 years to not fix this middle school problem that we have. We've got an issue with it.
So then I think it is a short-term solution, because if you build new high schools in 10 years, it's gonna change the middle school landscape then at that time.
So I guess the question is there more value in doing this and continuing 6, 7, 8? Or to go back to a 7, 8 plan as a portion of a longer range plan that would take the time to where that money would be spent towards that
But I
plan?
think that's also the idea that in St. Joseph, we think we only build buildings every 20 years. You know what I mean? Like,
Constant.
that's what I'm saying. So it's like we may need to put in money into some of these buildings now, get our kids where they need to be, improve instruction by creating more equity, and then have an eye that in 4 years, you need to build another building, a whole new building. I mean, my thought would be Lindbergh's gonna have to be completely redone, so you're gonna have to put some money into it at the beginning, but it's not gonna be money lost.
Is there a
Kenita has-
scenario,
Kenita's okay.
let me get you.
I look at this and I think, what about building a new middle school? Is this on another slide somewhere? Because to me, that's it's screaming, okay? Bodie and Truman, not that you want a mega middle school. I taught middle school for 20 years, those kids are nuts, okay? But, you know what I'm saying. That's what I see. I don't know.
But overall, this school district is building heavy.
Yes.
We had 14,000 students at one time, we're at 10.3, 10.4. Folks, we should not be
Get that.
building anything new. We need to redistribute the dollars to make sure our existing buildings are functional and put them toward the education of these kids. I don't want to build on, I don't want to add on. We've already determined we have 3 high schools and we're going to live with it. all right, let's live within what we have and make this work. But I do not want to build anything new at this point.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Well, I mean, you're gonna have to build something new at some point.
You're
but
gonna
Might
at
have
this-
to
but-
long
That's what I
term,
think
but
it'd
short
be a
term.
little
But I think this too, I just keep looking at scenario two, just 'cause I like it the best, but, then you're gonna figure out what elementary schools you really need and what you don't.
It'll waterfall down,
Right.
but we need a starting point of,
Yeah.
again, it's a nasty word, but transportation cures a lot of ills. If people would just have the kids on the bus 10 minutes longer, 7 minutes longer, it would cure a lot of ills, but I know this, we don't want to do that. Well, then we're kind of stuck, but the last thing, investment capital going into buildings in the school district, to me, is a big mistake at this point in time. Maybe someday, not now.
But we have to do something.
I think now's the time to do it.
Yeah.
I think
I don't disagree.
we need
gotta
to do something now.
What would it
that-
cost?
I mean-
Is there a cost of going back to a 7th and 8th model for 7 years as part of the
Yes.
plan and putting that money towards
That would
High
just,
school.
that's where
that?
I'm at. Are we looking at this
Because
right?
I don't
Yeah.
see a cost, I don't know if there is a major cost of going back to that 7th and 8th model for, like I said, 6, 7 years, or 5 years as part of that plan.
This feels like a short-term plan to me. I mean, and I get 10 years feels like a long time, but I think you're right. It's what we need to focus on now, but it's still, it feels temporary.
And I think part of the reason why it feels temporary is because we're undoing decisions that haven't been made. We're finally getting to the can that's been kicked down the road for how long? So we're gonna have to make.
the hard
Right,
decision.
and the thing is like, this is not gonna be, none of these scenarios are gonna be perfect.
No.
But we have to make progress, and we have to start moving, and every time we get close to making a decision, we say, maybe we should look at it differently. Like, let's do something.
Well, what you guys, in 2019, what did you guys find out? I feel like we're kind of throwing that out the window, and I don't think that was,
The board wasn't interested in pursuing that plan. It was the big issue.
From a boundary standpoint.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, but I mean, in 2019, you guys found,
The pressure point was still at the middle school
Right.
in 2019.
Yep.
I would say a couple of things, and then I've got a really brief, deep thought for everyone, so forgive me in advance. What I've heard from this committee since I joined last November and came to my first meeting, regardless of what we're talking about, keep the best interest of students in mind. I don't look at that graph and see that. I just don't. To me, I feel like we're looking at, we're taking one issue and potentially making another with capacity that we don't have. Another comment I would say, I am a Bodie family. I wouldn't put another dime in Bodie Middle School. I went to school there. I couldn't justify that. I just couldn't. And then, so I guess the deeper thought is, and forgive me, I'm a community big picture guy, and that's all things. Whether we're talking about schools, roads, bridges, development, whatever. I do a lot of traveling. I think most of you do a lot of traveling, and regardless or not, I'm really concerned about the perception of our community. I want to fix it, whatever that means. And the schools matter to me, and to me, regardless if we're talking 7 years, 10 years, 3 years, 4 years, and we can debate the number, but to me, it starts with high school buildings. If we're building anything, that's where it starts to me. Whatever it looks like to get there.
We don't have the money. Flat out, we don't have the money.
Well,
I mean,
Well, I'm not
there's
talking
no-
break ground tomorrow. I'm just saying, if we're
Sure.
looking down the road, whatever that looks
You're saying it needs to be in the
like.
plan.
I'm saying it needs to be in the plan. I mean,
I agree with that 100%.
But do you?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, look around, guys, at what's going on in our town. Look what's going on in other towns. I mean, here's the thing: if you want different kids to go to Ruby Doo or Bodie or whatever you're going to do, I don't think they're going to care if they're going to a brand new high school in a couple of years. I don't think it's as big a deal. I think if you don't start there, and I mean, part of it is what's good for our community is good for the schools, because you want teachers to stay here. You want teachers to be excited about being here. You want teachers to stop moving away. Then we need to show teachers and we need to show people that we care about students and we care about our facilities, and we're able to pay when we want to pay them. I mean, all that stuff matters. So it's not like, one's over here and one's over there, like maybe I care about the community, and you're saying, well, then you don't care about the schools. It all goes hand in hand. Right now, there's a perception issue. And again, I just don't think these 3 high schools, I mean, maintaining these old 3 high schools that are 100 years old is not sustainable. It's not physically responsible. And again, I was like, if we're not going to do something now, then when are we going to do something? And I think I think you need to start there. I agree with that. I think Jeff's saying the same thing. I think you need to start at the high school. And I know you can't do it all now, but you could build a St. Joe South, and you could buy the land for St. Joe North, and you could have, whatever, and you could have some vision. Right now, there's no vision.
We did this in 2018. We were told by the town very clearly, don't mess with my high school.
No, I don't know that that's what they said in 2019. They talked about
Okay, hey, I don't want to do that.
Right, yeah.
Let's take 1 minute when we speak, and let's allow someone else to speak.
Call on people.
Okay, Whitney.
Thanks, board member. Okay, so here's my deal. I agree with you-ish. We know that. We've talked enough about this. My point is this is a starting, we have to start somewhere. So if this is the starting point and we have a superintendent that says in his professional opinion, we need to start in the middle. We have Kevin, I believe is your name, who said in your professional opinion, the last time we did this, the hang up was still in the middle schools. Then let's start here with knowing that's going to alleviate pressures to the elementary schools and it's going to create opportunities for the high schools. I'm not saying we don't ever do high schools, but we have to do, I think, what the experts in the room are telling us are the issues. You're not telling us what to do. You're just saying here's where we need to start.
So I have a question. My question is this. We got 3 scenarios that all address middle school. Do we want to see just these 3 scenarios, or do we want to see how they play into a couple of high school scenarios? Are we ruling that out, or do we just want to talk about middle school?
Dr. Ecker, what do you think this process should be? Because I think when we all start saying, I think I know this, I think I know that, then it starts, then we don't do anything. We don't do anything.
Well, and that's what needs to be done. We need to do something.
And so you're saying start at the middle schools.
I wouldn't have brought that here if I didn't think.
Right. Well, I just got to double check you.
So do you think that we can address both at the same time, or would you rather address this and then move on to high schools?
Or elementary schools.
Or elementary schools?
Well, and I'm looking at it from a different standpoint, right? You guys are looking at it from a facility standpoint. You're hammering facility. I'm looking at it from an education process. In the education process, what we're doing right now is not right. That's why I think we have to start here. And I don't know, but I think administratively they would agree. Everybody that's sitting out in the crowd right now, education is what matters to us. I don't care where it's at, what it looks like, it doesn't make any difference. I understand the perception, I understand reality. But we've got to stop having conversations and we have to make something happen, period.
Is there a scenario where we can turn a high school into a middle school in regards to maybe what Mr. Leak?
Yeah, absolutely. You could turn all the high schools into middle schools.
We're gonna keep doing this. We paid you, right? So we paid money for a professional recommendation, and now we're just gonna say, nah, what about this school? We have how many different facilities? Over 20? So we're just gonna play this game. I mean, it will never stop. It will never stop unless we decide, here's the recommendation, move forward.
A couple concerns I have is one, we keep bringing up 2018, 2019. None of that means anything to me because for the simple fact, we were not prepared to do the right thing at those times. There was too many, elephants in the room that we couldn't touch. That's what's different now. So when we discuss these different scenarios, I feel that people are actually listening now. There's not any hidden agenda by different groups or anything like that. These scenarios are all based on the fact that we want the 6, 7, 8 model now. And I still think that we need to, is that the model? Like I said, if it is, does putting money towards this now work? Or do we save our money, go back to 7, 8 for so many years and go? We can put a big plan together now. We can start a plan. I trust the value of the DLR group, but he's only working with the parameters and that he's given a lot of the time.
That's correct.
And so.
And I think that kind of goes to my question, and I'm not being critical of anything. I guess the first note that I made was that I noted that the assumption was that sixth grade is now in middle school in SJSD. And is that a decision that has been made somewhere outside of this committee?
No. That's, I mean.
Or is it a
that's-
scenario?
That's what Vision
an option?
Forward, that's where we got the information from Vision Forward. And I'll be honest with you, I think 80% of us probably sitting in this room from a education standpoint feel like that's the best model. There are some of us that feel like 7-8 is the best model. But I will tell you this, it doesn't make any difference to us what happens, but it has to happen, okay? It has to be consistent. And if it's 7-8, you know what, we're gonna offer the very best education to kids that we can because we can do that. If it's 6-8, we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna offer the very best education to kids. And so what comes out of that, so I guess back to answer your question, no, there's not necessarily. That's what needs to be decided. That's why we're talking about this today.
I kind of disagree.
And one of them is 7-8.
I don't feel like Vision 4 said it needs to be 6 through 8 or 7 to 8.
And I didn't think so either, but that's what they're telling
I
me.
felt like they said there needs to be consistency.
Consistent. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and just to be clear, I think we talked about this today. If we were to go 7-8, there's capacity Cody Road to Spring Garden to fit 7-8 with redrawing lines.
Yes.
Could you say that one more time?
If we go 7-8 without any additions, you have capacity there for building Ruby and Spring Garden.
To just
What
have
does it
3
look like
middle
for-
schools.
Yes.
And what does it look like for elementary school?
Well, that would be something you would have to decide then, because then.
Because there's a
we have
lot of
some
sixth
options
graders
about
out
elementary school.
Ruben, who they're gonna have
But
to
you also
figure
agreed
out.
that true feeder from middle to high school.
See, I like that. That gives you time to build your longer range plan. I mean, not
I didn't hear
But
what
I
you said.
agree. I
I
agree.
didn't hear what you said again. Was your scenario to keep which middle
If you go
school?
7-8,
Yeah.
you could, the capacity works for those 3 middle schools on the far right there.
You could go from 4 to 3.
Which we've talked about, those 3 middle schools have the facility-wise at least meet what we need as far as activities and things too.
That, but Bodie is like everybody said, it's a 120-year-old monastery, 3 stories high. You know what I mean?
But for like a short term.
If Truman was in that instead of Bodie, you'd be a lot closer on the
I
scenario.
will tell you
It's
this.
not very costly, facility-wise, not very good middle school.
What's that?
True.
True.
Compared to Bodie, a 120-year-old monastery?
I mean, if you're talking about,
But you're really,
Yeah, the age of the buildings doesn't matter.
but you're really talking a plan to
Right,
get
that's
you
in
through
this
5.
district.
You're really talking
you want
about
to
a
say
plan
also.
though to get you through the next 5 years and start working on your long-term plan. And if it's high schools, and then what do you do with the high schools that you're replacing? And then you can figure out where to send the kids from Bodie.
And maybe we need to take
I
a
agree.
survey. I like scenario 2. That's my opinion.
Scenario what? I didn't hear you.
Scenario 2.
I just feel like that causes more disruption in the community than if you went with scenario 3.
That's why I liked it.
But
Because everybody's,
my,
right, just particularly.
but is it better to limit disruption now and say we're gonna develop this long-term plan and then here comes your disruption?
Rick?
I'll just put my 2 cents because I haven't said much. I've talked with a lot of educators, and some for 7-8, some for 6-7-8. I kind of agree with Gabe in the sense that if it's consistent and done right, I think they both can work. I appreciate the work done on all the scenarios. The only thing that keeps coming to me is seeing additional money put in to do additions, when I feel like there are some scenarios out there where we can still fit everyone in the buildings without spending money and adding on to the schools. So I guess that's my only hiccup is putting money into adding on to Lindbergh. We both know that, we all know adding money to Bodie is not feasible and not, So I guess that's where I'm at right now, which doesn't help much.
And you said Ruby Doo could be replaced Lindbergh, was that right?
Sure.
I mean,
What is the cost of each one of these scenarios?
$400 a square foot right now, isn't it? $400 a square foot, so just add it up. Right, Kevin?
Yeah, and if it doesn't happen for a year, it's probably up from
But
that.
if it's
Let's
7,
make
8.
it $500 a square foot for all these additions.
If we're just talking 7, 8, that all goes out.
That sounds like millions. to
Okay,
me.
Kenitha, did you have a question?
Yeah, I've been out at Oak Grove many times. My daughter teaches there. She's got 24 kids in her third grade class, and it's crowded in there. So I question whether those classrooms are really that large for the kids. I also like to point out, because it is a really nice school, that all the playground stuff, Ruby Doo, being I taught there, doesn't even have a playground. You'd have to take a hill away to put one, and we all know how expensive playgrounds are. I mean, just something else to think about, okay? I don't know. I like 3.
I have a question. In the 6, 7, 8 model we currently have, what does the day of the 6th grade look like? Does it look like elementary 6th
Depends on
grade?
the school.
Or does it look
Looks
like
like middle
middle
school.
school 6th grade? Right.
And if you do it right, honestly,
So you're
it
not
probably
doing-
should look like a 6th grade. It should look like an elementary setting in a middle school.
Right, that's what I was gonna say, so you need the playground and the outdoor space and all that kind of stuff that they don't currently have, or, you know.
Spend all that
And
money.
we're still talking about teaming if we go 6, 7, and 8? Is that right?
So your 6, 8 is gonna be a lot more expensive.
Right.
Yes.
Because we have to add facilities for the 6th grade into the middle schools that.
And your staffing is gonna be way more.
Right.
So,
So is it possible to push the 6th grade back to the elementaries that we currently still have open? I mean, that's the issue, and keep class sizes at 22 or 24, you know? I mean, do we have that space? I looked around, in the south end, I don't see it. I mean, to be honest,
You
north
need-
end is barely big enough.
You need Spring Garden to be an elementary.
Right. So, right.
And that's
And that
not
means
an
you have to keep
expensive
voting.
option.
Well, that means you have to keep
I'm assuming that's
voting.
not an expensive option.
No, not at all. You know, so like from scenario 2, you could slide Garden Park over in Spring Garden's place. So you
Start
would
again,
have
start again, say again. Let-
scenario 3, we're back to the 7, 8. You could go Bodie, Rubidoux, Garden Park, and then Spring Garden could be your elementary school, which fixes your elementary problem on the south end. Close down Hyde.
Then you have a 7, 8 model, and you have K through 6 again.
Absolutely.
And we're basically to the point where we're not spending bond money on.
good.
Right.
It does keep Bodie open for how much ever longer if we want to do that. And now, true.
Well, but I think that kind of goes
Right.
back to that more long-term plan, and I understand we have to start somewhere, but personally, it makes me nervous to start somewhere and spend a bunch of money when we start there, and then not exactly understand what all of the ramifications of that are gonna be. That feels uncomfortable to me personally.
Well, and I think and you bring up a good point, and I say that because a lot of people in the community think just like you do from a financial standpoint, and I think if the more fiscally responsible we are, the better off we're gonna be to get buy-in. So if you go with the 7, 8 model, you slide Garden Park over there, you push Spring Garden into an elementary school, that's your cheapest option, right? You're not spending any money
But you have to do something gym space.
at Garden Park, I guess.
Yeah. That's gonna be a challenge.
there's money that you have to spend at times, and there's money that you want to spend at times. And I don't want to do any of these. And I don't know if we have to do any of these. So it's 24 million, 25 million, and 40 million are our options. I hate to spend money on something I'm really not happy with at the end. So that's why I was just saying, is there a bigger picture? And yeah, it would mean that we don't do something today, but it doesn't mean that we can't. A long-range plan has to be started. It doesn't all happen at once.
So it sounds like there's a a lot of consensus around 7th through 8th, Carden Park, Bodie, Rubidoux, moving Spring Garden to an elementary school and adding some sort of gym space to Carden Park. Dr. Segrist, is that what you're saying would have to happen?
I'm sorry.
Yes, you got it.
Yeah, you hit, yeah.
So can we just do that?
How much space do we have at Carden Park? Like, what's the, how much ground do we own there?
Whatever you can build on a mountain, you can build there.
No, that's I think
It's all
it's,
devil's backbone.
But I mean, that's the big issue, is that can you put a gym there? It'd be tough. I mean, I don't know that, we own what, 3.5 acres there or something like that?
That's what they're here to tell us.
Right.
Side of the
That's
mountain.
why we're having
Right.
these discussions, and he can bring that back and
And
say,
that's the
we can
thing,
do
though,
this
is
or we
that
can't.
if that's the only, if adding a gym to one building is like the biggest
Expense.
That's not too
issue.
bad.
And Dr. Edgar, you're not on the.
I agree, yeah, I do think they all need to
What's
have
the
athletic
feasibility,
facilities.
but we're doing the feasibility study with the,
Uh-huh.
when's that gonna be done?
Oh, I don't know, probably 4 months. Are you on that committee?
Are you talking about the athletic development
Yeah.
feasibility study?
Uh-huh.
Probably by end of summer.
We've had 2 meetings so far.
But that could come into play with.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ma'am, what was your comment?
Me? Yes.
We're worried about facilities being equal. Are they all going to have all the same equal abilities to have a football field? If we're going to have football games and football teams and middle school, they all need.
We talked about that administratively the other day whenever Kevin left, and we feel like that's important. From our standpoint, everything has to be the same. And so we told him to go back and, you could actually put a football field at Rubidoux, you can do those types of things. So we want the athletic facilities. That's why I say we need to make sure, if we're gonna do it, we need to make sure we do it right. And so, yes, that'll be all part of that plan, and it all needs to be equitable.
Any other questions or comments?
But we have $85 million worth of no tax increase bond issue that the facilities won't be 6-7 million.
One
And
comment to the group that has to do with some comments made in the previous sessions, and I asked this to the group, to anybody in the room, has anybody in here tried to buy a house in St. Joe lately? And the reason I ask is in past meetings, we've talked about why our enrollment goes down and why nobody wants to live here and this and that. There's a reason we haven't had enrollment rise. It's hard to buy a house in St. Joseph.
There's a housing task force that's being created right now.
Yeah. It's recognized.
Because I have family members wanting to move back into town, and they're leaving today to go back to Minnesota. They've been in town here 5 times trying to buy a house, and by the time that something comes on the market today and the time that they would get down here tomorrow, it's gone. And I would just want to make sure that that's recognized, because I felt that we blame the schools, but if there were 100 new houses built in our community, schools, whatever they may be, they'd be sold tomorrow.
The chamber is putting together a housing task force that'll look at rental, executive.
Correct.
Retirement.
It's a full spectrum because we have a housing problem in this community, and we are gonna have a hard time increasing enrollment until we have housing available.
Yes, and
Increasing your
I've
tax
always
base
felt
and
that
everything else is-
that we've blamed a lot on the schools when you can't get a house.
That's correct.
Yep.
And also in our study, the way that we build is really going to probably be east and southeast next in our community. And that's something I think that as we're figuring this out, I think we need to keep in mind as well.
And that goes with what you suggested earlier, Jeff, is the 7th, 8th grade. I mean, there's a lot of fiscal common sense behind that. It may go against national trends. I mean, the national education trends are 6, 7, 8, and they've done a lot of studies of 6th graders, and it's kind of a nice transition. But by the same token, where we're at for the timing of the plan, 7th, 8th model would be a fairly cheap way to go while we figure out the longer term.
Take that money towards.
Put it towards teachers and education.
So Gabe, as you're talking about this as long range, you're probably thinking like, once you get this fixed, no matter what happens down the road with high schools, 2, 3, stay the same, whatever, you want this to stick and not, like even if it is Bodie in scenario 3, like maybe replacement of a high school would then take the place of Bodie. So you're probably seeing this more long-term because you want this to work no matter what happens with it.
Absolutely.
And we're okay, and back to Kevin's comment in regards to 6-8 and 7-8, we can offer the same education to kids if they're in 7-8 model or 6-8, doesn't make any difference. You can argue research-based that one's better than the other, but we just need to be consistent so we can offer a good education to kids, period.
So I'm gonna.
7-8 it is.
I'm gonna suggest maybe we vote on this next time, because everyone seems to have different viewpoints. But if we can come up with these 3 scenarios and maybe 2 or 3 7-8 models, and perhaps vote on it the next time we're here, we can at least get a consensus of the group, something to report back to the board. And so if you got any suggestions, maybe send it over in the email, and we can put it in a scenario. I'm sure you guys probably already have a couple different scenarios for 7th and 8th models, right?
That's what he's gonna
Yeah.
put all that together for
Okay.
us. So.
Email to you, sir, email to you, David.
Sure, and I'll get it over and make sure everybody has the information.
And so in July, I think what he can do is bring back that model, what it looks like from a building standpoint. And then we talk about the feeder patterns, and the feeder patterns will be specifically what you can do with your elementary schools. And you'll be able to see that we only need 4 feeding into here, and now we're at 11 elementaries rather than 14. I'm just speaking out loud, so that we haven't even looked into that. We didn't even talk about it because there was no reason to talk about it until we got this fixed.
So as Oak Grove and Carden Park were recently built specifically for elementaries, will there be any challenges if you want to switch them to elementary schools?
Yes, I mean, you'll have to retrofit them. And just like Kenitha said, her daughter teaches over at Oak Grove, and if you feel like the capacity is bad with 24 elementary kids, what's it going to be with 24 middle school kids? So, yeah, those buildings, you just have to take the square footage into, that's all we're looking at is the square footage. And then there would definitely have to be some money spent inside in order.
If
to
we
make it.
flip-flopped,
You have the same thing with gyms and all that, wouldn't
if
you?
we flip-flopped Carden Park and Spring Garden, and went with the idea of Spring Garden becoming elementary school, Carden Park over in scenario 3 is a middle school, besides a gym being added on, would there still be an additional add-on that would needed to be Carden Park to fit in that scenario?
Library.
What'd you say?
We need to do something with the library at Carter Park and the gym.
And probably parking as well.
Gotcha. But as far as like an annex of more classroom, like, there's probably room.
Yeah, what's your capacity there, Carter Park?
Do they still have
I mean, it's got more square footage than Ruben Lane voting, so.
Gabe, I have a question. So the answer comes out really quickly when it's brought up, but I'm just curious, and I'll preface by saying, not my expertise. When would we have the bonding capacity to do something on a major scale, whatever that is?
So
How do we work towards that?
Yeah. Keep making prepayments and those types of things. The problem was, Brett, it was mismanaged a little bit in the
Okay.
past where that they weren't paying the debt off properly and those types of things. If you see, just school districts just right down the road, every 4 years they're building something, right?
Sure.
And that's what you have to get to that point. So to answer your question, to do one, the bonding capacity is probably there. To do two, that's where you're going to have
Right.
the issue. Will it get there? It's hard for me to answer. I mean, we're doing everything we can. We're doing 2 prepayments a year now.
Right.
We're doing everything to get that built back up, but it wasn't in a very good spot.
Right.
So, I don't know. You might be 7-8
You
years
got a
down the
full
road.
successor, Brett,
Huh?
I asked Brett if he had a full successor, he could help
So, I mean,
Give me a number.
if we really look at it, I mean, honestly, the attitude of the community, there's no chance that anybody wants to change the high schools right now. There's no way to get that through. I mean, it just
I don't know
isn't.
if
Today,
I-
there's no way.
I will say this, I will say the people that came out and voted, I don't know if it's St. Joe as a whole. Yes, the people that came out and voted resoundingly said no,
Yeah.
but that was
It is.
now
Well,
maybe
that's-
that's the rest of the town's just apathetic and don't care.
That was a bad plan.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, and I
Yeah.
don't begrudge anybody that came up with it. They were making the best decisions they could in real time. And I get that. I know that AM Fan Building came open and they're like, hey, how can we use this?
But at the end of the day, that was a bad plan. I think if you put a good plan out there, I think absolutely people can vote for it, because I don't think what we're doing is sustainable. Man, what we're doing isn't sustainable. So to come up with a plan that's,
I know boundaries was also a huge issue.
Yeah.
With that $107 million bond. It wasn't just the 2 high schools. It was also, where's my kid gonna go to school?
yeah, absolutely.
So that had a lot to do with
I
it.
100% think we can do it.
I will say this, even though we're not discussing high schools now, it is on the list of 8 things that we will discuss, and we'll get to it at some point. If there are no other questions or comments, the time is now 3 o'clock, and we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.